Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
Greetings, and thank you so much for joining me, Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Herbally Yours brings you the latest information about the many facets in the world of natural living. Today, I am so happy to have as our guest Dr. Christine Page. Dr. Page is a pioneer in the field of holistic healthcare, especially for women. She's a charismatic speaker, natural intuitive, and wisdom keeper. She's been called a mystical physician, seeing herself as a bridge builder between different healing modalities and states of consciousness. Dr. Page is an international speaker and offers talks and seminars as well as online courses on many subjects, such as women's empowerment, enhancing intuition, listening to the wisdom of the body, stepping into mystery, and tapping into the earth. Dr. Page believes that illness is a messenger from the soul, and true healing involves transformation into wholeness. She is the author of many books, including Heart of the Great Mother. And you can find her at Christine Page MD. It's Instagram and just christinepage.com for links to everywhere. So thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Page.
Thank you, Ellen. It's really good to be with you.
Now, let's take a little step back in time and talk about how, in your childhood, what made you want to be a physician?
I say that because I was one of those kids who carried around a doctor's bag, probably at the age of 5. And one of my earliest memories was really when I can almost remember being in a cot, in a crib, and being able to understand that one of my dolls had hurt its arm. And my parents said, well, you know, the arm had fallen off, I should say. And my parents said, oh, well, maybe you should give up that doll. And I said, oh, no, why can't we mend it? And clearly I was in this mode of how do we help anything that is wounded or anything that needs care? And my parents, especially my mother and my grandmothers, were involved with homeopathy and healing and psychic abilities. And so it wasn't that I was necessarily only looking at orthodox medicine. I was really saying, isn't there something we can do on any scale, on a holistic scale? And I think that upbringing that I had really helped me to always help my patients to say, let's look at if there's anything else that we can do. This isn't false hope, but never getting limited by one system. And that's really how I've lived my life and certainly practiced my medicine.
Well, in your background, things like energy and psychic healing and homeopathy, it sounds like those were not strange things to you, but things that were incorporated into your early life.
Exactly. And I think Britain is very fortunate. That's where I come from, just outside London, but we're very fortunate that we have many colleges of psychic studies and homeopathy, and people are allowed to practice these things as long as they don't try and imitate a doctor or say that they're a policeman. These are the rules that we have. So these things were normal, and I think that's what helped me, Ellen, because I would go and listen to channeled readers and people speaking who were 5,000 years old, and I thought everybody did this. And astrology was normal, numerology was normal. And I think when it was normalized in my family and someone says to me, how can you believe in that? I say, how did you forget? Because to me, this was the way we worked as priest healers or healers in the olden days, which certainly were very effective.
So having that openness to it, however, did you find when you were in school studying conventional medicine, that it was at odds with these kinds of beliefs, or was it incorporated there in the UK?
Well, I have to say, I think my spirit guides have been protecting me all the way. I ended up going to a medical school that was only for, well, initially it had been set up because women weren't allowed to practice medicine or learn medicine.
Wait a minute, Dr. Christine. When was that women were not allowed to practice medicine?
So my college was probably built or started in about the late 1800s. So that was back in the late 1800s that women weren't allowed. I think the early 1900s, and I'm apologizing to my college, I can't quite remember when it was conceived. But by the time I got there, which was in the 70s, we were allowing men in. So kind of the men were now allowing women in, but we were allowing men in. And so when I got there, we were 50-50 men and women as students. But the interesting thing is that the majority of my consultants were female. And they were women who had families, but they were also very powerful women who were well acknowledged for their intellectual knowledge. They were researchers, etc. So when I came to the States, especially, and people talked about any sort of gender inequality, I was like, I never saw that, because I would be in an operating theater and it would only have women in it. And so I also went to a high school that only had women because I was at an all-girls high school. But again, very intelligent, all-rounded women who balanced their life, their personal life with their work life. So I'm saying all of that there was an openness in the college I went to, the Royal Free in London, and that helped me to not see things as unusual. And that's why I say my spirit guides were helping me to be in a more unconventional setting. And I've always done that.
Well, it sounds like when you use the word spirit guide, and, it just rolls off your tongue like that's a very common belief system for you. There is certainly some that would find that sort of the antithesis of a scientific perspective.
Well, you and I think we both have been around for a while, and I had the most amazing male colleagues as well as female colleagues who believed in intuition and who believed that it was about our skills, but we also trusted that what was going to happen was out of our hands. And I say that because anybody who's done medicine in the way many of us have, who may be listening, it wasn't about we could only do the best we had, but ultimately, it was the soul's decision. It was the patient's decision whether they lived or died. And I think we've lost that. And so I'm saying I saw babies live when they should have died and patients die when they should have lived. And we had this sort of understanding that we gave the very best we could, but there's something bigger than us that is contributing to a patient's well-being.
Now that is beautiful. I love the names of your books. One is Frontiers of Health and the Handbook of Women's Mysteries. What is that book about?
Well, as you can hear, I have an interest particularly in women's health because being a woman myself, and I realized that over the decades, even though women believe that we've become more free, more liberated, we can make our own choices, we've also moved away from what is natural to us. And when I was writing the book, I realized that the one thing that all women do, we don't all give birth. In fact, 20% of women at the age of 40 haven't given birth. But what we all do is we all bleed. And I realized that I wasn't taught properly about such a thing, a menstrual bleed or a rhythm. I wasn't taught necessarily to love my body without looking at it and wondering if I should lose weight, etc. And that many of what we call the innate issues of women, whether it's our menstrual cycle, it's our gifts, our intuitive gifts, they're not necessarily taught. So the Handbook of Women's Mysteries really puts down some practical ideas of how we can get back in touch with these practices that are natural. We don't have to go out and find them. They're literally in our bodies already, and that women especially have a power inside of them to bring about transformation, that the masculine energy doesn't have the same energy, because we are literally transforming like the moon does. We have cycles, whereas our masculine self or our men don't have that cycles. So that's what I wrote. I wrote it and created meditations around how to come back in tune with ourselves.
Well, that's interesting, because going back in history, there was a practice called the red tent.
Yes.
Where the women actually retreated and basically had a time and space, and that was also used energetically to create balance and change.
Absolutely. And I've studied many of the ancient myths and the indigenous myths, and yes, they understood that this was such a powerful time for women, that they were literally, with their blood, they were shedding the old energies, often not just of themselves, but of their family, and then would be on the third day inspired with what they felt the family should, or they'd come up with a dream or an idea for the family to experience for the next month. And so I think that, I was brought up, my mother used to say, call it the curse, and it was like, please don't say that. That was how she would talk about it, because that was the language that she'd been brought up with. And also I hear so many women say, I only have a period or a uterus to have children. And it's so untrue, because every month, whatever our age, even beyond menopause, women are giving birth to a new idea. Whether postmenopausally, I relate to the new moon, the dark moon time, or whether you're doing this on the first 3 days of your period.
Well, let me go into something a little bit more medical with you because of today's challenges, Dr. Christine Page, and you are a medical doctor. And of course, the entire world, the UK, the United States, and it seems like everywhere else in the world, is right now struggling with a specific virus. And what is, the difference between a virus and a bacteria, and what is going on with this in your determination from a metaphysical perspective besides a physical perspective?
So really great questions, a lot there. First of all, a virus and a bacteria are very different, as you know, Ellen. I'm just explaining this. So a bacteria is like, I tried to describe it like a little animal. And I describe that because it's complete in itself. It can replicate, it can reproduce itself. And we have millions of viruses and bacteria in our bodies already. So the idea that, wow, there's this virus, many of us already have been in tune with coronavirus many times and maybe carrying that already in our body. But the bacteria is often what we call an opportunistic agent. In other words, it waits for you to be run down or for something to not work well, and then it jumps in and infects you. So sometimes you might say, well, I hurt, maybe you get a cold, just a common cold, that's a virus. But a little later you start to produce mucus and it's a bit yellow, that's the bacteria. So the bacteria will wait for something to be damaged and then will jump in. Whereas a virus is pure genetic information. We call it either RNA and DNA. This coronavirus is RNA. And what that means, it's a piece of information. If we can understand that a virus is information, and what it needs is to get into a cell in order to use the cell's mechanism to replicate itself. In other words, it can't survive or replicate unless it's in a host. And that's what's the difference between a bacteria and a virus. Now, when a virus, and we literally are carrying all these viruses anyway, when a virus comes into our system, metaphysically, it's literally bringing information. And I want to kind of suggest it's more like listening to something on the television or on the internet, and you're making a decision. Do I want to integrate that information into my body, or do I want to reject it? And we probably do a bit of both. But the ability to make decisions like that is what we call our immune system. And a healthy immune system is able to say no or yes or maybe in the middle there. But what happens is when we are so-called immunosuppressed, and that's what's happening with so many people who are getting really sick from this virus, their immune system has already become depressed by their own illnesses, by the drugs they're putting into their body, maybe from past vaccines, or by their state of stress, which is a really quick immune suppressor. So we can't make healthy choices. So what I'm putting over, and again, I'm hoping I'm answering the question, but from a holistic point of view, it's one thing we can do to improve our immune system is actually make healthy choices for ourselves. Because what we know suppresses the immune system quicker than anything is a feeling of helplessness. And there's so much helplessness out there because we don't know. Nobody knows what's going to happen. So all I'm suggesting is that maybe 2-3 times a day, you say, what can I make a choice about? Maybe it's what you eat. Maybe it's going for a walk. Maybe it's about turning off the television. But making choices where you can control the outcome is a really healthy way of improving your immune system, as well as getting out and exercising when you can, getting into fresh air, taking all the vitamins that I'm sure your listeners know about. But it is all about coming back into balance with yourself and making choices for yourself.
So that's very interesting because you're talking about it on a little bit of a psychosocial way. But even if we look at it from more of a physical perspective, what they're even talking about is most often those individuals who not only contract this particular virus, but do get ill from it, which is, by the way, a very small percentage.
Yes.
If you look at the people who contact it, I think the next number that they should have, the number they have about how many people they know had it, that's only linked to testing.
Yeah.
And then the next number should be how many people are known to, just get better or not even experience symptoms, because that's the vast majority.
Ellen, can I just say, because the biggest problem we have, and this is from my medical, is that the tests we are doing, the PCR, is not accurate.
Oh, please share that, Dr. Christie.
Okay, so the PCR is literally taking a piece of protein out of this nasal swab or the throat swab, and what you're looking for is a small fragment of let's say I make a sentence, you're taking, this is the sentence, and all you're looking for is the word the. And that's what they're doing. They're looking for, out of this sentence, this is a sentence, they're looking for that small word. Maybe I'll say this. They're looking for this out of that sentence I've just given. That is not proof that this person is infected with COVID-19. And that's, I have to say, Ellen, as you can hear me feeling, I'm so annoyed because every time they say, oh, we found you've got COVID. No, you haven't. You've found that you have a small protein that is present in many different viruses.
That was my understanding also. So it's not really a specificity for this particular strain.
You absolutely. And then they'll say you're infected with it. No, any of us will keep, if we've had, let's say, these so-called infection, that lasts about 8 to 10 days when you are literally infectious. After that, you will keep expressing this tiny piece of protein for months on. So it tells us nothing except that at some time you have met a similar protein and now you're expressing it.
Right. It's a very inexact science other than...
And that's what we're worried about with the antibody. You see, back in the UK 2 months ago, they said, we're going to have an antibody test. Well, okay, so what you do is you produce the antigen, you put the virus into a test tube and you let the antigen produces the antibody. Okay, so I'm making it simplistic. But we haven't managed that. So now there's antibody tests coming out, but I'm not convinced they've been able to isolate the virus with its specificity in order to produce a specific antibody test.
And I think that's the danger of rushing to a vaccine, which vaccines have so many side effects that people, don't really seem to be paying attention to that possibility.
Ellen, you're absolutely right. And if you go back to the early days when we used to have inactive vaccines or inactive toxins or dead virus, they were relatively safe. But we have moved on from that. And a lot of times now the viruses that are being produced, you literally put a virus in an animal, and then you take that vaccine that's being produced, but it has also come A, through an animal, and B, it's been attached to another virus. So what we're now injecting into people is much more than what we used to do, as we would say, maybe 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And this specific one they're wanting, which is this messenger RNA one, is I have to say the results of them using it, they've wanted to be able to use this particular virus, vaccine that they're wanting to give to everybody. They've tried it on animals with really poor results. And what the FDA have agreed to is actually to not bother about animal tests. They're trying to rush this through, so they've agreed to not need animal tests on this vaccine, just to go right to human tests.
Well, we'll have to see how that all works out. What is your view as a very advanced metaphysician and the author of the book Heart of the Great Mother, and being both trained in conventional medicine and understanding the world from a spiritual perspective at the same time? What is your sort of big takeaway from this process that we are in as a world, and what would be the best outcome?
So that's, a great question, because this was a time that was predicted. So I know that might sound but I want us to understand as human beings that on some level our soul called this in, not the virus, but this time of lockdown, cocooning. So in this so-called cocooning time, many of us have been cut off from the normal world we live in, and we're being isolated, but we're also being isolated with our families, etc. But what this is allowing us to do is we're between the caterpillar and the butterfly. And what we're being able to do is to tap into our deep core of not, just me, Christine, or you, Ellen. It's not about anybody else. It's like, what is the world I want to see, I want to emerge into? And that isn't about a thinking process. That's a feeling process. It's like, what is it that you or I want to bring out of ourselves to see in the world in the future? And that's what we're being given the chance to do. And when we, if I may say, look at too much news, it's almost like someone else is deciding our future. And what I want to put the message over is, no, we are the deciders of our future. We're in this amazing time where we're expanding our consciousness to be able to say, I don't need to stay in a box. I'm bigger than my box. What do I want to create in the future?
Well, that's really beautiful. And really there is a discussion of, rather than setting things up the same way they were, moving forward into a more environmentally friendly, lower hyped way of living, because I think this is a big reset and actually could be very positive if used correctly.
Oh, I totally agree. It is a reset, and it's when I was shown this in a meditation some 15 years ago, I was shown that, let's say someone came and wiped the sand clear of whatever you had built before, any sand castles we had, and I was shown like, okay, everything's being wiped clear. And in this meditation, I was asked, well, what do you want to create now? And I was like, it can't be as easy as that. And what I was told in my meditation, it's always been as easy as that. In other words, it's not new that we create our reality. What we're being asked is the reality we're creating one that's in harmony with us, or one we want to keep creating? And that's why this is such an amazing time. It's not someone else doing this. It's like, okay, reset, as you say. Where do you want to go? And I think that's where we are. But what I was also shown that 40% of people will immediately recreate what has just been swept away, because that's what we know. And 40% of people will fall asleep. In other words, ask for someone else to make the decision. And the others will start to change the world as they see it. So I think we're all in this big reset, and the message I'm trying to say is it's not being done to us. What is that thing that brings you joy? And that might sound, wow, it's a bit, we're not talking about joy here, but if you're watching something that's causing anxiety, stop watching it. Find something that brings the beauty into your world, or the joy. Find something that you would like to see in the world in the future.
Well, I think that is really very, very excellent advice, and I thank you so much for that, Dr. Page. And what would be the best thing for people to do in terms of, hunkering down and not progressing out too quickly?
Medically, I have to say that I think we do need to start to mix. I'm sorry to say, I know this is against maybe what everybody's saying, but our best immunity is when we meet with other people. That's how we build a healthy immunity. And I'm not going to go beyond that.
Well, you're not the only one, Doctor, because
I just have to say, yes.
That's okay. There's whole countries like Sweden who have
yes.
based their entire premise, and they're certainly doing better from a mental health perspective.
That's right. I'm really concerned about what's going on in people's homes. I know that there's a lot of people maybe having a good experience, but there's an awful lot not. And I think children need to get back to school. I think children naturally need to be with with other children, etc. And I'm just putting that thought out. But I'm also saying is, what is the normal that do you really, what is it you are thinking, I don't want to do anymore? Maybe you've been traveling to work and you say, I don't want to travel to work anymore. Or maybe I want to have more time with my children. Or maybe it's been nice, I've been meeting my husband more. I don't know. But look at what's happened in the last 2 months and be able to, all of us, decide what is it of the normal I don't want to go back to, and what do I want more of? And I know I like mixing with people. I'm missing people. It's part of my travel. I love traveling and meeting different people. My heart is yearning for that.
Well, we're going to be leaving Dr. Christine, but I want our listeners to know that you have been listening to Dr. Christine Page. She's the author of many books. Her latest book, Heart of the Great Mother, focuses on how to create and access portals that lead you to a new world of peace, prosperity, and unity. And you can find out more at Christine, with a C, ChristinePage.com, or visit our archives here on Nassau Community College for Herbally Yours, because you can actually link it to the show. And Dr. Christine, I'll send you an archive to this show as well, and then people can find you very easily. We'd be happy for you to post it.
Thank you, Ellen. It's been such a pleasure talking with you and to your wonderful listeners. And everybody be well, be happy, and spread that joy.
And thank you so much for joining us. Once again, tuning into Herbally Yours, produced in the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, email us at whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamhi, the Natural Nurse, at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.